18 months. With Amanda felt like finding the missing piece of my life puzzle. We met at that San Francisco tech conference, and from the moment she laughed at my terrible joke about coding, I knew she was special. Her marketing executive confidence perfectly balanced my more introverted software developer personality. The connection was instant and deep, like something out of a movie that I never thought would happen to me. When my grandfather passed away, leaving me his real estate properties, Amanda seemed supportive and understanding, until I picked up her phone that Sunday morning and saw the text from her ex. "I'm just waiting for his inheritance. Then I'm yours." If you've ever felt that stomach-dropping sensation of betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe before I tell you how I turned the tables on the woman who saw me as nothing but a payday. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, I learned the value of hard work from my parents. My dad fixed cars and my mom taught elementary school. We were comfortable but never wealthy. I put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, landing a position at a promising tech startup in San Francisco by age 28. By 32, I had established myself as a competent software developer with a solid reputation in the industry. The night I met Amanda changed everything. We were both attending the West Coast Tech Summit, and she approached me after my presentation on cybersecurity innovations. Standing there in her sleek black dress business card, extended with perfectly manicured fingers, she introduced herself as the marketing director for a competing tech firm. "Your presentation was impressive," she said with a smile that reached her blue eyes. "I think there might be some collaborative potential between our companies." That business meeting turned into drinks, which turned into dinner the following week, and within a month we were officially dating. Amanda was everything I thought I wanted. Intelligent, ambitious, stylish, and seemingly interested in everything about me. She came from a more privileged background, having attended private schools and an Ivy League university, but never made me feel lesser for my more modest upbringing. For our first anniversary, we took a trip to wine country, staying in a charming bed and breakfast. Under the stars with glasses of Cabernet in hand, she told me she loved me for the first time. I still remember how the moonlight caught in her blonde hair as she leaned in to kiss me. "You know what I love about you, Damien? You're real. Not like the trust fund guys I used to date. You built everything you have from scratch." By the 18-month mark, we had moved in together, combining our lives in a downtown apartment with views of the bay. We discussed future plans, marriage, possibly children, a house in the suburbs. I thought we were building something real. When my grandfather Joseph passed away, I was devastated. He had raised me every summer on his properties in the Pacific Northwest, teaching me about maintenance, responsibility, and the value of land. Amanda held my hand at the funeral and listened to my stories about him for hours afterward. 2 weeks later, the attorney called to discuss the inheritance. Grandpa Joe had left me 3 valuable properties: a lakefront cabin in Idaho, a small apartment building in Seattle, and a beachfront lot in Oregon. Combined, they were worth over $7 million. When I told Amanda, she hugged me tightly. "He must have really loved you. What are you going to do with everything?" I didn't notice how her voice had changed, taking on a new tone of interest that hadn't been there before. The next month brought exciting professional news as well. Our startup received a major round of funding, and I was promoted to senior developer with stock options that would vest over the next 3 years. My financial future was looking brighter than I had ever imagined possible. Amanda seemed genuinely happy for me, celebrating with an expensive bottle of champagne she brought home one evening. To my successful man, she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. "I always knew you had potential." Looking back, I should have caught the subtle shift in how she spoke about our relationship. The conversations about our future became increasingly focused on financial matters: which neighborhoods we should consider for our future home, how to invest my newly acquired assets when we might be able to upgrade our lifestyle. "What's the timeline on finalizing the inheritance?" she asked casually one evening as we were cooking dinner. "These things can get tied up in probate for years. My grandfather had everything arranged pretty cleanly," I replied, chopping vegetables. The attorney says 3 to 6 months at most. That's wonderful, she said, squeezing my shoulder. We should start thinking about our future more seriously then. Maybe look into investment properties of our own. I was too blinded by love to see the red flags. When she suggested we tour open houses in the most exclusive neighborhoods just for fun, I went along enthusiastically. When she began sending me links to luxury cars that would suit you, I was flattered by her attention to my success. One evening, while having dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, a tall, well-dressed man approached our table. Amanda visibly stiffened. "Amanda," he said coolly. "What a surprise." "Brian," she responded, her voice tight. "Damien, this is Brian Taylor, an old friend. Brian, this is my boyfriend Damien." The handshake was firm, almost challenging, and the look he gave me was one of assessment rather than greeting. I felt like I was being sized up and found wanting. "Nice to meet you," I said, trying to diffuse the tension. "Likewise," he replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Amanda, we should catch up sometime. For old time's sake." After he left, I asked about him. Amanda waved dismissively. "Just someone I dated briefly years ago. Finance guy. Boring and full of himself. Not worth discussing." I accepted her explanation, never suspecting that boring Brian would become a central character in the story of our unraveling. On a typical Sunday morning in June, Amanda was taking her usual long shower while I lounged in bed scrolling through my phone. We had plans to meet friends for brunch later, and I was checking restaurant reviews. "Babe," Amanda called from the bathroom. "Can you order coffee from that place on the corner?" "My phone should be on the nightstand." "Use my app, I have credits." I reached for her phone without thinking twice. We often used each other's phones for practical things like this, having long ago exchanged passwords in what I thought was a gesture of trust. I unlocked her screen and was about to open the coffee shop app when a notification slid down from the top. "B. So when are you going to tell him? This waiting game is getting old." My finger hovered over the message. I had never been the jealous, snooping type. I believed in privacy and trust as cornerstones of our relationship. But something in my gut clenched hard. "B. Brian." The same Brian from the restaurant. The shower was still running. I had maybe 5 minutes. I tapped the notification. What opened before me was months of conversation between Amanda and Brian. I scrolled quickly, my hands beginning to shake as I scanned the exchanges. "He has no idea. The inheritance is substantial, multiple properties." Amanda had written this just days after I told her about my grandfather's will. "You always did have a talent for finding men with potential. But is this one really worth the wait?" Brian had responded. Their messages continued through the months, becoming increasingly intimate and explicit. They had met for lunch several times, always when I was in all-day meetings or traveling for work. They had discussed their future together. They had mocked my clothes, my background, my interests. Then I saw it, the message that would change everything. "Brian, when will you finally leave that loser Amanda? I'm just waiting for his inheritance then. I'm yours. Trust me, it'll be worth it. A few more months of playing house with Damien, and we'll have the capital to start fresh. He's actually a decent guy, which makes it easier to pretend. But he's never going to be on your level." I felt physically ill, my chest constricting as though all the air had been squeezed from my lungs. Every moment of our relationship flashed before my eyes, now tainted with doubt. Had any of it been real? Her laughter, her touches, her whispered words of love in the dark, all fabricated for financial gain. I heard the shower turn off. Quickly, I closed the message thread and opened the coffee app, placing our usual order with fingers that felt numb. I set her phone back on the nightstand exactly as I had found it then, retreated to my side of the bed. When Amanda emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet and skin flushed, she looked exactly the same as she had every Sunday morning for over a year. But everything had changed. "Coffee ordered?" she asked cheerfully. "All set," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Should be ready in 15. "You're the best," she said, leaning down to kiss me. I forced myself not to recoil at her touch. The rest of the day passed in a surreal haze. I went through the motions of our brunch, smiling at appropriate times, participating in conversation without really hearing the words. Our friends noticed nothing amiss, and neither did Amanda. I had become an actor in my own life, playing the role of the unsuspecting boyfriend while my mind raced with questions and revelations. That night, as Amanda slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts chaotic. The woman I loved, the future I had planned, the trust I had given so completely, all built on a foundation of sand that had just washed away. I thought about confronting her, immediately imagined the satisfaction of watching her face as I exposed her lies. But something stopped me. This betrayal was too calculated, too patient in its execution. It deserved more than an emotional reaction. If Amanda could play the long game, so could I. I needed time to process, to plan, to protect myself. Most of all, I needed to understand the full extent of her deception before deciding how to respond. As dawn broke over the city skyline, I had made my decision. I would not confront Amanda yet. Instead, I would gather information, secure my assets, and design a response that would reveal her true character, not just to me, but to herself. This wouldn't be about revenge, but about justice, and perhaps eventually healing. The week following my discovery was the most challenging performance of my life. Every morning I woke up beside Amanda. Every kiss goodbye as we left for work. Every text message checking in throughout the day. All of it felt like driving nails into my own heart. But I maintained the facade, perfectly giving no indication that I knew about her betrayal. Meanwhile, I became a detective in my own relationship. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I checked Amanda's social media accounts, not through snooping, but by simply paying closer attention to her public interactions. There it was, subtle comments between her and Brian that would seem innocent to anyone else but now screamed volumes to me. Inside jokes, references to meetings, even a check-in at a restaurant downtown on a day she had told me she was having lunch with a client. One afternoon, while Amanda was at a marketing conference, which I now suspected was time spent with Brian, I carefully examined our shared living space. In her desk drawer beneath a stack of magazines, I found a folder containing printouts of my bank, statements, information about my grandfather's properties, and notes about probate timelines. The extent of her research into my financial situation was chilling. I called my family attorney, Martin Goldstein, who had been handling my grandfather's estate. "Damien, good to hear from you," he greeted me warmly. "We're making excellent progress on the probate. Should be wrapped up within 6 weeks." "That's great, Martin," I replied. "I wanted to ask, has anyone else contacted you about the details of the inheritance?" "A woman. Perhaps." There was a pause on the line. "Actually, yes. A woman called last month identifying herself as your fiancé. She had several detailed questions about the properties and their value. I explained that I could only discuss those details with you directly." My stomach dropped. "Did she give a name, Amanda Westfield?" "I assumed you knew since she had so many specific details already. She mentioned you were planning to use the properties as collateral for a business venture." "We've discussed some possibilities," I lied, trying to keep my voice even. "Thanks for maintaining confidentiality. And Martin, going forward, please don't share any information about the inheritance with anyone but me, regardless of their relationship to me." "Of course, Damien. Is everything all right?" "Just being cautious," I assured him, though nothing was all right at all. That evening I contacted my college friend Tyler, who worked in financial security. Without revealing the full situation, I explained that I needed to protect some assets from potential unauthorized access. "Sounds like you've got relationship troubles," he said perceptively. Remembered Jack from sophomore year. His girlfriend cleaned out their joint account when they broke up. Took months to sort out legally. Taking Tyler's advice, I began securing my finances. I changed passwords on all accounts, set up two-factor authentication, and created new accounts at different banks where I transferred portions of my savings. I updated my credit card notifications to alert me of any purchases over $100 and removed Amanda as an authorized user without informing her. Through all this, Amanda seemed oblivious to my investigations. In fact, she became more affectionate than usual, planning special date nights and bringing home thoughtful gifts. One evening, she initiated a serious conversation about our future. "I've been thinking," she said, curled against me on the couch. "Once your inheritance is finalized, we should really talk about making things official. I'm not getting any younger, and I want to start building our life together properly." The calculated timing of this pseudo-proposal made my blood run cold, but I smiled and kissed her forehead. "I've been thinking about our future too," I said, truthfully, though not in the way she imagined. The inspiration for my plan came from an unlikely source, a podcast about relationship scams I listened to during my morning runs. One story involved a man who discovered his partner was only with him for his family wealth. Rather than confronting her directly, he created a situation that revealed her true motivations to both of them. Over the next few days, I meticulously crafted a fake bankruptcy notice on official-looking letterhead. Using my design skills and borrowing language from real documents I found online, I created something convincing enough to pass a cursory inspection. The notice claimed that investments I had made in a friend's startup had failed catastrophically, resulting in significant financial liabilities. Most importantly, it suggested that my inheritance properties might be affected by the bankruptcy proceedings. I printed the document on heavy paper and weathered it slightly to look authentic. I also set up a hidden camera in our apartment, angled toward my desk, where I planned to leave the document accidentally in plain sight. The night before executing my plan, I secured a temporary place to stay, packed a small bag with essentials, and hid it in my car trunk. I had no idea how quickly things would unravel, but I wanted to be prepared for any scenario. I also made sure all my important documents were secured away from our apartment. On Thursday morning, I deliberately left the bankruptcy notice on my desk, partially covered by other papers, but visible enough to be discovered. I kissed Amanda goodbye as usual and headed to work, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. From my office, I accessed the hidden camera feed on my phone. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Then, at 11:24 a.m., Amanda returned home unexpectedly. She moved around the apartment, apparently looking for something, when she noticed the papers on my desk. I watched as she casually glanced at them, then did a double take, and picked up the bankruptcy notice. Her expression changed from curiosity to shock to panic in the span of seconds. She read the document multiple times, pacing the room. Then she grabbed her phone and made a call, putting it on speaker as she continued to examine the document. "Brian, we have a problem." Her voice was tense. "I just found paperwork at Damien's desk. He's filing for bankruptcy." "What? How is that possible? I thought you said he was loaded." Brian's voice was clear through the speaker. "He was supposed to be the inheritance, the properties. The notice says it might all be tied up in some failed investment. Some startup he put money into crashed." "Jesus, Amanda. You've wasted almost 2 years on this guy for nothing I don't know yet," she said, her voice hardening. "I need to figure out exactly how bad this is. Maybe it's just a temporary setback." "Temporary," Brian scoffed. "Bankruptcies take years to clear. Are you really going to wait around while he rebuilds his credit from nothing? We had plans, Amanda. The Maldives next spring, the investment property in Aspen." I know. Let me think." She ran her fingers through her hair in frustration. "Maybe there's a way to salvage something from this mess." "I'm not waiting anymore," Brian said firmly. "I've put my life on hold while you played house with this guy. It's me or him right now. And if it's him, you're choosing a financial disaster." The call ended with Amanda looking defeated. She stared at the bankruptcy notice for several more minutes, then began moving purposefully around the apartment. I watched as she packed a suitcase with her most expensive clothing and accessories, gathered her jewelry, and collected important documents. She made several more calls, speaking in hushed tones I couldn't quite make out. At 2:13 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Amanda. Family emergency came up. Need to fly to Chicago immediately. My sister's having problems. Will call when I land. Love you. On camera, I watched her take one last look around our apartment, hefting her suitcase and walking out the door without a trace of hesitation or remorse. Just like that, 18 months of what I thought was love evaporated in less than 3 hours. For the next week, I maintained radio silence, despite Amanda's increasingly frantic attempts to contact me. First came concerned text messages, asking if I was okay and how I was handling the financial situation. When those went unanswered, she left voicemails expressing her support during this difficult time and assuring me that money isn't everything. "Damien, it's me again," her voice quavered in her fifth message. "I'm really worried about you. Please call me back. Whatever you're going through, we can figure it out together. I'm here for you, babe." The performance was almost convincing, but I had seen her true colors through the camera lens. The woman who claimed to love me had packed her bags and walked out within hours of believing I was financially ruined. Each message only strengthened my resolve to see my plan through to completion. Meanwhile, I moved forward with finalizing my inheritance. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Exactly 2 weeks after Amanda's departure, Martin called to inform me that all paperwork was complete. The 3 properties were now legally mine, free and clear. "What are your plans for the properties, Damien?" he asked. "I'm going to sell the Seattle apartments," I decided, "but keep the lakefront cabin and the Oregon beachfront lot for now." The sale of the apartment building moved quickly, netting me just over $3 million after taxes. With those funds, I purchased a beautiful modern home in the Berkeley Hills, with panoramic views of San Francisco Bay, exactly the kind of house Amanda had always talked about wanting. On the day I closed on the new house, I posted a single photo on Instagram, something I rarely did. The image showed me standing on the expansive deck sunset over the Bay Bridge in the background, glass of champagne in hand. The caption read, simply, "New beginnings, new perspective. Grateful for life's unexpected turns." I deliberately didn't tag the location or provide any details, but anyone familiar with the area would recognize the distinctive view. Within minutes of posting, my phone exploded with notifications, including 5 consecutive calls from Amanda. When I finally answered the 6th call, her voice came through breathless and panicked. "Damien, thank God you answered. I've been so worried about you. Are you okay? What's going on? Where are you?" "Hello, Amanda," I said calmly. "I'm doing quite well, actually. How's your sister in Chicago?" The silence on the other end spoke volumes. "What sister?" I continued. "Oh, right. The emergency that conveniently happened the exact day you found what you thought was a bankruptcy notice on my desk. The same day you called Brian to discuss how I was no longer financially viable for your future plans." "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Let me refresh your memory," I said, my voice hardening. "I'm just waiting for his inheritance. Then, I'm yours." Does that sound familiar? Or how about discussing your timeline for leaving me once you secured your share of my grandfather's properties? Another long silence. "Then you went through my phone, you spied on me. That's a violation of privacy, Damien." I almost laughed at the absurdity of her trying to claim moral high ground. "Actually, the text came through while I was ordering coffee on your phone, with your permission. As for the rest, you made that call to Brian on speakerphone in our apartment. Not very discreet for someone executing a long con." It wasn't like that, she protested, her voice shifting to a pleading tone. "Brian and I have history, yes, but what he and I discussed was just talk. What you and I had was real, Damien. I really do love you. Loved me enough to walk out the moment you thought I was broke," I countered. "Loved me enough to research my financial status behind my back and call my attorney pretending to be my fiancé." "I can explain all of that," she insisted. "Please just let me see you. We can talk this through." "There's nothing to talk about, Amanda. You showed me exactly who you are and what our relationship meant to you. Consider this conversation our closure. The bankruptcy notice, she said suddenly. It wasn't real, was it? You set me up. I created an opportunity for you to reveal your true character, I corrected. You did the rest all on your own. Damien, please, her voice broke. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. What we had was special. Don't throw it all away over one lapse in judgment. It wasn't one lapse in judgment. It was a calculated plan, executed over months. You were playing a role the entire time we were together, Amanda. The only mistake you made was underestimating me. Before ending the call, I said one final thing: I actually should thank you. You taught me an invaluable lesson about trust and showed me the importance of seeing people for who they really are, not who I want them to be. For that education, the price was almost worth it. Almost. Over the next few weeks, Amanda cycled through various tactics to regain contact. She sent tearful apologies, angry accusations, and even showed up at my workplace unannounced, causing a scene that required security intervention. She mailed expensive gifts to my office with pleading notes attached. She enlisted mutual friends to reach out on her behalf, telling them edited versions of our breakup that cast her as the victim of my sudden, unexplained change of heart. Each attempt only reinforced that I had made the right decision. The woman I had fallen in love with had never existed. The most unexpected confrontation came one evening as I was having dinner at a steakhouse with some colleagues. Brian approached my table just as we were finishing our meal. "Got a minute?" he asked, his expression a mixture of hostility and curiosity. I excused myself from my colleagues and followed him to the bar area, maintaining a calm exterior despite my surprise. "Amanda told me what you did," he began once we were seated with drinks. "Pretty elaborate scheme just to test someone's loyalty." "Interesting perspective," I replied. "She told you about the fake bankruptcy notice, but conveniently left out the part where she was only dating me for my inheritance. The part where you two were planning your future together behind my back." Brian had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Look, Amanda and I have complicated history. We dated for years before you came along. Those feelings don't just disappear. I have no issue with you having history," I clarified. "My issue was discovering that my relationship of 18 months was built entirely on financial calculations rather than genuine emotion. You're welcome to her, by the way. Though I suspect your market value has increased considerably in her eyes now that I'm out of the picture." "We're not together," he said, taking a long sip of his whiskey. "After everything blew up with you, she came to me expecting to pick up where we left off. But trust works both ways. If she could execute that level of deception with you, what would stop her from doing the same to me when someone with deeper pockets comes along?" I couldn't help but appreciate the irony. "So neither of you got what you wanted in the end." Brian shrugged. "I dodged a bullet. Sounds like you did too." He finished his drink and stood to leave. "For what it's worth, I think she did actually care about you, in her own twisted way. Just not enough to overcome her ambitions. That's the thing about genuine love," I responded. "It's not a calculation. It's a choice you make every day, regardless of circumstances." He nodded thoughtfully before walking away, leaving me with an unexpected sense of closure. The aftermath with our mutual friends was more complicated. Some took Amanda's side, initially swayed by her persuasive version of events. But as time passed and inconsistencies in her story emerged, most came to understand what had really happened. Jessica, a marketing colleague of Amanda's, approached me at an industry networking event with an illuminating perspective. "I should have warned you about her," she admitted over drinks. "Amanda did something similar to her ex before you. He was an architect with promising connections to major developers. When a project fell through and those connections dried up, she was gone within weeks. It's a pattern with her." "Why didn't you say something?" I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. Jessica looked away. "I tried to drop hints, but they were probably too subtle. And honestly, Amanda can be vindictive when crossed. I was worried about professional blowback. "I'm sorry, Damien. That was cowardly of me." Her apology helped me realize something important this experience had shown me, not just who my enemies were, but who my true friends were as well. The people who stood by me, who offered support without judgment, who saw my worth beyond my financial status. These were relationships worth cherishing. The first few months after the breakup were a strange mixture of liberation and loss. Despite knowing that Amanda's love had been fabricated, the emotional attachment I had formed was real, and severing it completely took time. I would catch myself reaching for my phone to share a funny observation with her, or turning to comment on something she would have appreciated only to remember she was no longer part of my life. I moved into my new house, but the empty spaces echoed with possibilities that would never materialize. The future I had envisioned, marriage, children, building a life together, had vanished, replaced by uncertain blank pages. It's normal to mourn what you thought you had, even if it wasn't real. My therapist, Dr. Winters, explained during one of our sessions. You're grieving the loss of a future you had planned, not necessarily the person who turned out to be different than you believed. Those words helped frame my experience in a way that made healing possible. I wasn't missing Amanda specifically, but rather the idea of partnership and connection that she had represented. That distinction allowed me to move forward without feeling foolish for still experiencing moments of sadness. The turning point in my recovery came from an unexpected source. My cousin Michael visited from Portland, bringing with him old family photo albums and stories about our grandfather. Remember how Grandpa Joe could always tell when someone was being dishonest? Michael reminisced as we looked through pictures on my deck. He used to say he could smell insincerity from a mile away. He tried to teach me that skill, I laughed. Always said I was too quick to see the good in people. Being open-hearted isn't a weakness, Damien, Michael insisted. Grandpa also said that trust was like good land, worth the investment even if you occasionally got poor weather. That conversation sparked a renewed connection with family members I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Amanda. I flew to Portland for weekend visits, spent time at the lakefront cabin with cousins and their children, and found comfort in the unconditional acceptance of people who had known me my entire life. I also rediscovered old passions that had taken a back seat during my relationship. I joined a local rock climbing gym, resumed playing guitar with a casual band of tech industry friends, and volunteered teaching coding to underprivileged kids on weekends. Each activity connected me with people who shared genuine interests and values, creating friendships based on authentic common ground. 6 months after the breakup, I took a solo trip to Japan, something I had always wanted to do but had postponed when Amanda expressed little interest. Walking through ancient temples in Kyoto and navigating the energetic streets of Tokyo, I experienced a profound sense of independence and possibility. I was building a life on my own terms, making choices based solely on my own desires and values. The inheritance that had nearly made me a victim also became a source of positive impact. I established a small scholarship fund at my alma mater for students from working-class backgrounds pursuing computer science degrees. I invested in 2 ethical tech startups focused on accessibility solutions. And I committed to maintaining the Oregon beachfront property as natural habitat rather than developing it, honoring my grandfather's love of unspoiled coastline. When I returned from Japan, I felt ready to consider dating again, though, with a much more cautious approach. I was upfront about my financial situation in general terms, watching carefully for any signs of unusual interest or calculation. I set stronger boundaries around personal information and took relationships slowly, allowing character to reveal itself naturally over time. A year after discovering Amanda's betrayal, I met Sophia at a charity fundraiser for the coding program where I volunteered. As the organization's grant writer, she shared my passion for educational access and approached relationships with refreshing directness. "I've been burned too," she confessed on our 3rd date. "My ex-husband lied about almost everything. His job, his past, even his name at one point. It took me years to trust anyone again." "How did you move past it?" I asked, genuinely curious about her journey. I realized that closing myself off completely meant he was still controlling my life long after he was gone, she explained. The trick is finding the balance between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. That conversation marked the beginning of a relationship built on mutual respect and transparency. We moved forward carefully, each understanding the other's hesitation and need for verification. Trust developed incrementally through consistent words and actions, rather than blind faith or infatuation. Looking back now at the entire experience with Amanda, I recognize it as one of the most painful but necessary lessons of my adult life. The betrayal stripped away my naivety and forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. Not everyone approaches relationships with honesty and integrity. Some people view others as means to an end, rather than ends in themselves. Love for some is transactional, rather than transcendent. But the experience also revealed strength I didn't know I possessed. The ability to face deception with clarity rather than denial, to respond with calculated action rather than helpless emotion, and ultimately to rebuild my capacity for trust on a more discerning foundation. If you've experienced betrayal in your own life, remember that your worth isn't determined by how others value you, especially those who see you as a resource rather than a person. The price of learning who someone truly is may feel devastatingly high in the moment, but the cost of remaining deceived is ultimately higher. True connection can only exist between people who see and accept each other authentically. Sometimes finding that genuine connection requires losing the counterfeit version first. Like me, you might discover that losing someone who never truly loved you is actually the first step to finding yourself again. Have you ever discovered someone was with you for entirely different reasons than you thought? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It helps others find these stories of resilience and growth. Until next time, remember that your value never depends on what others can get from you. Thank you for listening, and may you find relationships built on genuine connection rather than calculation.